Talk to you for a few minutes, a little bit from the Bible, as obviously we're a church, so we use the Bible. And I want to talk a little bit today about generations. As I was thinking about today, I was thinking the word that came to mind was generations. Actually, that word was in one of the songs we sung. The word generations, we've just used it this morning. And I was thinking about generations, and I've been thinking about it a lot recently, mainly because I turned 40 last year. I know I don't look a day over 50, but I turned 40 last year, and it's made me realize it was a long time ago that I left school. It really was. And some of you might be thinking, that's nothing. I was longer than that. Some of you might be thinking, well, I've only just left. Some of you might be thinking, I'm still in school. But I discovered Cher's Believe song was 25 years old. Did you know that this year? I found that out yesterday. It was fascinating to me. But some of the songs that came out 20 years ago are still the things that I think are current right now. Apparently, I'm wrong. And I was thinking about generations and how time flies and how it's funny what generations do to us. I was thinking about how all of us have been raised somehow by some people. I don't know who they are. I don't know who you were raised by. It might be a biological mother and father. It might have been adopted parents. I don't know who you were raised by. But we're all raised, and generations are funny things because we have these sayings in our language like, oh, she's just like her mother, or he's just like his father. Because as we're raised in generations, we tend to become like those people. Charlie is just like her mum. In no way at all. It happens, doesn't it? What happens is as we grow up, those people that have raised us, we either become like them or become the opposite of what they are. It tends to happen. But we do pick up habits. I've noticed, when I was a teenager, the thing that used to annoy me most about my dad, he'd always tell me to turn the light off when I left the room. Now, what do I do to my kids all the time? Turn off the light! Do you not know the cost of electricity right now? Clearly they don't know the cost of electricity right now. And clearly they don't care that I put LED bulbs in their lights either to try and save money, but they will leave it on. Well, so it doesn't cost that much. Well, not to you it doesn't, but to me it does. And now, as I've hit this age, I've realized how difficult it must have been for my parents. Shouldn't have raised me because my kids are much better than I was as a kid. And I wonder what's the same for you? Where are you the same as those that are older than you that raised you? And where are you different? What's changed? What have you brought through? What generationally has come through? Because generations are really, really interesting. If you think about it in the way we dress, generations are very different. Even the photo of Zach we had up earlier had a hoodie on. Older generation never had hoodies as much back in the day. Whereas people sort of probably about 40, let's put me in there, and under, we like our hoodies. Okay? It's just different generations dress differently. I guarantee most people in this room who've got more of a suit jacket type on fit into the older generation category. How old are you? Oh, I'm so sorry. It was a very general statement, okay? Not everyone fits into this, okay? Don't worry, it's okay. Let's say I look really old. So you don't look old, so you've aged better than I have. I am trying to make up for it, don't worry. My bad. But it's interesting, isn't it? Even the words we use, the language we use is different. Everything changes, but some things remain the same. We pick up habits, we lose habits, things change. And there's this passage in the Bible I want to read out from Psalm 78, verses 1 to 8. It says this. It says, "My people hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things from of old, things we have heard and known, things our ancestors have told us. We will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children, then they would put their trust in God, and they would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. They would not be like their ancestors, a stubborn and rebellious generation, whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to him. You see, the reality is each generation has a real massive impact on the next generation. It does. Whether we like it or not, the people who are in the generation above us, I love looking at culture, whether it's the different, boomers, millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Zers, it might mean nothing to you, but it is fascinating to me to see how different people respond and different cultures and different generations respond in different ways. And if you don't believe me, how generations have an impact upon the next, 15 years ago, approximately 15 years ago, no one would have been interested in a photo of what you were going to eat. How many of you in this room have ever taken a picture of your plate of food and put it on social media for others to like? Anyone? Yes. Influence is everywhere. As lovely as it is to know what you're eating, do we really care? Some people do. And then it's really interesting. We watch our phones going, how many people have liked my plate of food? Where has that come from? Well, you've got a lot of followers, Kimberly. I have. Is it? Oh. Well, he's obviously more of an influencer than I am, so I don't put much up at all on social media, just because none of you would like it. But it's really interesting, isn't it, how we've influenced people, and then they go, oh, look at that plate of food, I'm hungry. Don't we? Oh, I fancy what they're having, but they're eating at the really posh place. I'm going to go down to Lidl or Aldi or wherever and get the cheap frozen version. I'm not going to take a photo because it'll be obvious that I've done it cheap and at home, but it's influenced me. Or even look at the way now, what you get people now have made careers, and there may be some of you in the room, you've got so many followers, people send you free stuff that you take photos of and other people buy it. Talk about influence. I see it all the time, people with things tagged, and I'm like, I wouldn't even know what I'm doing, to be honest with you. I don't like shopping at the best of times. But this is how influence has happened, and influencing is getting wider and wider and wider what's happening amongst generations. But we get influenced in many ways. You might have family traditions. The family you grew up in, you might have traditions. One of the most obvious ways I'll say to you, what did your family do at Christmas when you were a child? Have any of those traditions translated when you're an adult? And what happens if you then become an adult, move out home and don't do those family Christmas traditions anymore? You probably get awkward conversations. Or if you find a couple and then they've got to choose which family tradition to go and be a part of, and you have this awkward conversation every Christmas. Who are we going to see? Who are we not going to see? How's it going to work? What traditions are we going to break? What are we going to do? And even within families, we have certain language that we use that might work within our families but not other families. Certain actions. I've turned out I have certain mannerisms of my dad. I did not try to pick up mannerisms of my dad. I'm very different to my dad. But we picked up some. And not only that, the other day, my brother sent a video he found from my mum's 50th birthday where I was hilarious in this video. And I sound just like my brother. I was like, what? When I was growing up, my brother and I did not get on. And yet we sound the same. We speak the same. We did things the same because we influence each other. Friendship groups are the same. With your friendship groups, you pick up language that you use, the work groups you use, you have actions. And sometimes when you're in those groups, you act differently around those people. Sarah is always telling me that when I'm around my certain friend Dave, I resort to being a teenager again. And I think it's just funny, but she thinks we resort to being teenage boys again like we were. We've known each other since we were 11. And you may notice you act differently because you influence other people. We have influence upon each other and among the generations around us. Even my boy, who's now 11, has started doing some of the same things I do, at which I'm going, oh, son, pick up the good habits, not the bad ones, please. He's influenced. Clara will pick up habits of Zach and Charlie. Don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. We'll find out in about 16 years' time, won't we, Clara? But as well, each generation, as I read from this psalm, and from a point of following Jesus, has the responsibility of teaching the next generation about God. That's what I read in that psalm. They've told the story. And that's part of what a dedication is, saying, I'm going to pass on the story to the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. And you might be thinking, well, I'm not from a generation of this. But it doesn't matter, but you could start for your future generations. And it's exciting how this story gets passed down. In fact, the Bible has a number of times where it tells us things like this happen. Psalm 145 tells us this: one generation commends your works to another. They tell of your mighty acts. They talk about what God has done, what he is doing, the miraculous things that are happening. They tell people about him. And generations was something that is a really important thing in the Bible. See, the Bible is not this book of rules. It is a relational book. And if you don't believe me, listen to this. In Luke 18, Jesus says this: Jesus called the children to him and said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these." It's relational. The Bible was about relationship of generations. It's not just about being all the same age, having all the same likes, from the same background. It's about generations. So I love the church, because the church has the little ones, it has old ones. We've had some that have just been born, literally a few weeks old, in this church, and we've got one lady who doesn't make it out very often now, who's 99. We have generations who make up the church. And Jesus said, "Let the children come to me." I love this church. We've got loads of kids. It's brilliant. And just for those of you that guess, just to warn you afterwards, we do have biscuits with the tea and coffee, but because we have so many kids, they go very quickly. So you snooze, you lose. I'm really sorry. It's just a rule of thumb. Okay? So you've got to be quick. But the good news is there's food at the Cows Bar. I've been told there's even a meat option as well. That was my specific request to Charlie. But also we read in 2 Timothy, this is in the New Testament, this is after Jesus, he says this, that I'm reminded of your sincere faith. So this is somebody talking to this young man, Timothy, here. And he says this: which first lived, this faith, in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice. And I persuaded now lives in you also. You see this generational grandmother to mother to child. The Bible is a story of generations being passed down. And as we come to dedications, that's what we're talking about. A story being passed down. A faith being passed down. Because following Jesus is relational. It's not about learning to live by a rule book. That's not what it is. It's about following Jesus and learning to live in what he describes as the best life for you. It's about learning about him. And yes, you may say, well, the Bible does tell us how to live. Is that not rules? It does, but it does that because it says there's a better way to live. Sometimes the things you do or see or experience in life cause you pain and harm. But the Bible tells me it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. He wants to offer you freedom. That is why Jesus came. But then you might be thinking, if you're here and you're not, and you think, well, I've got a faith, but how do I pass it on to the next generation? In Deuteronomy, which is in the Old Testament, right back at the beginning of that massive book we call the Bible, it says this, Deuteronomy 6. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. It tells us to impress it on our kids. The passing on of faith is about impressing on it on our children. It's about living a passionate life of yourself following Jesus. If you want someone else to follow something, impress a life of passion upon them. If you can impress a life that is passionate upon them, they're likely to follow what you are doing. We're also taught to talk about the faith. Don't shy away from questions that may come. Kids ask lots of questions. If you've got kids, they always ask them at the most inopportune times, normally bedtime. Or I've got to the point in life now where my kids ask me questions when I'm driving and I have to say, be quiet, I'm concentrating. How many of you can't concentrate when your kids ask you a question but could listen to the radio? It's interesting, isn't it? Let them ask questions, even encourage questions. Make talking to them about Jesus a normal way of life. And finally, from that passage, you learn that everything in life is an opportunity. Be part of a church family. Come and meet with the generations and learn what it is to follow Jesus. I love the fact that here at Pinehurst, the kids love coming. Even I think it was at Christmas this year, one of the dads said, one of the things they love is the fact their kid loves coming to church. Almost dragging them along. That for me is the way it should be. Our kids love it so much that they come on, why aren't you coming? Everything in life is an opportunity. But I want to be honest with us as well, because we must not assume that all our children will come to know God. Sadly, I've seen many kids grow up and walk away from following Jesus for all sorts of reasons. You might be here as one of those people today. I don't know. I don't know all of your stories, all of your backgrounds. That probably is our youngest member of the church, just going out just there. I don't know all of your stories and backgrounds, but maybe you were brought up and maybe you think, well, I'm not following Jesus anymore. You know, for me, I lead a church, but that doesn't mean my kids have an automatic ticket to heaven. I have to try and be passionate, talk to them, impress a life upon them, but it doesn't mean that they get in on my faith. They have to get in on their faith, not mine. I can't assume that they will. All I can do is try and point the way to them. Because the reality is everyone is born with a sin nature. The Bible tells me this. It says, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, ironically was named Adam, not me on this occasion. No jokes, Barry, I'm watching you particularly. And death through sin, and in this way death came to all people because all have sinned. You see, sin is the word we use, which anything that stops us from living for God as he asks and for putting him first. And you might be sat here thinking, well, I've never sinned. Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever lied? You're saying no, you're lying right now, so you've sinned. So you've fallen into the trap. I'm not trying to trap you, by the way, but we all sin. We can't deny it. And if you say, I've never sinned out loud, never lied out loud, in your head, have you ever thought anything bad about someone? Sorry. You see, the reality is no matter how cute you were born, Clara, I'm going to be honest with you, there will come a time where you will pick things up, hopefully not the guinea pigs, and throw them at things that mummy and daddy don't want you to. And there will come a time, and you all know this because you've all been kids, or you've seen kids, who just say no to everything. Where did they get that from? Other Charlie. Okay. Joke, Kimberly, okay. Where do kids get it from? Do we actively teach our kids to misbehave? Is that what we do? No. We would just all... You might... Oh, you again. It's always one, isn't it? So, yeah. I'll keep an eye on you later. It's always... Is it always him? Yeah, okay. The reality is we're all born with this nature which sins. But the good news is we all have an opportunity to receive Jesus, to follow Jesus. You see, and like I said earlier, this dedication doesn't make Clara a Christian, nor does any other service. You have to choose to follow Jesus. It's something you choose to do. And let me put this in a term that you might understand. See, I'm a Liverpool fan. Big cheer. Yes. No? They're doing better than Chelsea with the amount of money they've spent, okay? Sorry, I've learned a bit about your family history. What have we got down here? Hammer. Oh, well, Bournemouth might stay up and you might go down, so we'll see. I'm a Liverpool fan, right? I could take my kids to a game. I could even buy them a shirt, but that doesn't necessarily make them a fan, right? They have to choose to be a fan. I can't force it upon them. In fact, I've got a picture in my phone of my littlest one, who's now 8, in a Bournemouth kit, and she looks so grumpy. I put her in this Bournemouth kit. I thought she looked really cute on it. She looked so grumpy, and she was like, I'm never wearing that again. I can't force her to be a football fan. I can't force her to like Bournemouth or any team. She has to choose that for ourselves. Because the reality is all of us in this room have to make choices. And at some point, you have to make a choice that, do I want to follow Jesus or not? And even coming to a church service once in a while doesn't make you a Christian. By doing a token Christmas service, I'm going to be honest with you, doesn't make you a Christian. It's about following a man, not going to a meeting. It's about accepting the fact that you've sinned and you need a Savior in Jesus. It's stopping trying to save yourself and trusting in God. And do you know, when the recent times we've seen more people realize this? When COVID hit. You know why? Because when COVID hit, your job couldn't save you, your money couldn't save you, your friends couldn't save you. Could they? No. You had to trust in something other than yourself. You see, following Jesus, it's not about dressing right. It's not about talking right. It's about whether you know Jesus or not. That's what it is. That's what it boils down to. And perhaps some of you here right now are thinking, okay, I can get my head around that, but what do I do? Well, I'm just going to give you 3 simple things, and I'm going to ask the band back, and I'm going to pray. As you're here today, I'm just going to ask you, not out loud, just to evaluate your own personal relationship with Jesus. Do you know him or not? You want to know more? I'd love to chat to you. If you don't want to chat to me, there's a little booklet out there called Why Jesus. Take it, have a read. Just evaluate your own personal relationship with Jesus. Also, why not think about today, talking about generations. Talk to those generations around you that maybe God has placed under your influence, either older than you or younger than you, because generations influence the next. And then thirdly, you might want to get here. You might want to dedicate yourself to being used by God for his purpose and glory. And you never know what might happen. You might be thinking it's impossible. I didn't grow up in a Christian family, well, neither did I started following Jesus at the age of 17. I was failing school. I got ungraded 3 times. Had no plan, no life. And yet the irony is, I'm now in a position of influencing others because I've dedicated myself to following Jesus. And what he's done with me has been beyond my expectations. He can do the same with you. I'm going to ask the band back, and we're going to sing a final song together. But as they come and get ready, I'm just going to pray. And when I pray, often we say amen at the end. Amen means we agree. You don't have to say it. I can't force you. This is your choice. But when I pray, do you agree with some of the words I say? Say amen. It doesn't need to be loud. But if you don't, that's okay. You don't need to say amen. But let me just pray before the band lead us in a final song together. Father, first of all, we thank you for generations. We thank you that in this room, there are children, there are parents, there are grandparents. We thank you that there are different ages, there are different walks of life, there are different backgrounds, there are different cultures. God, we thank you that all of these people in this room were created in your image. And Father, I pray this morning as we've come to see Clara dedicated and try and show her something of Jesus. Father, I just pray that this morning will be one where we can all just think about where we stand. What is the influence on our life? What are the generations I influence? And what is my own personal relationship with Jesus like? And Father, I pray that today maybe it'll be a day that we start asking some questions, or we start dedicating our life to you, Jesus, in a way that we never have before, whether that's for the first time or whether